5 o'clock. I'll open the meeting on the 26th of July 2022.
Yeah.
Time being 5 p.m. Recording of the meeting in accordance with local government regulation 2015. The public is advised that the proceedings of the meetings of council will be recorded on digital media to assist in the preparation of minutes and to ensure that a true and accurate account of debate and discussions of the meeting is available. Acknowledgement of country council. West Coast Council acknowledges the traditional owners, custodians of the land on which we gather today and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. Apologies. So we've got an apology from the Deputy Mayor, Kerry Graham, and also from Councillor Ryan Sykes. Any other apology? Everyone else is here. Item 205, peculiar interest. This time of the meeting, any council with a peculiar interest with any item on the agenda may do so now or at the time of just before the item is discussed.
I'll have one, Mayor. A pecuniary interest in the West Coast Brand Implementation Strategy section.
Thanks, Councillor Evans. I've got one for item 217/A, which is the Queensland Anglers Club in-kind support. No other confirmation of the minutes, that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the West Coast Council held on the Tuesday the 28th of June, a copy of which has been previously circulated to councillors prior to the meeting be confirmed as true and accurate. Someone like to move that way, please. Move Councillor Evans, to Councillor Shea. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Public participation and question time. 15 minutes is allocated of the meeting for anyone in the public gallery that would like to ask a question, or in this case we've also got a petition representation, I believe. Anyone from the public?
Yes.
Could you, before speaking, your name and address, please, for the records.
My name is Evelyn Casteres, and I live in 14 Carlson Street, Rosebery.
Thank you. Okay. Evelyn.
Yes.
You can address the council.
Well, if I address the council, I come here because I'm supporting the beautification of Rosebery. I've been living 3 years in Rosebery. When I came, I was absolutely shocked in one state, and what state was around the barbecue area and the flower pots in the main street. It was a lot of grasses. When I approached the council workers, they told me that they used to weed around the barbecue area once a year. So do you mow your lawn once a year? It was a total mess. So I took upon myself at the beginning, for volunteers. It took us 2 months, once a week, to clear that mess. So because I am a gardener, I have put a lot of plants that I bought myself or brought from my garden, and it's also a lot of them come from donation. So as you see, I've done a petition. So this petition was placed in two businesses, and it was not really advertised, it was on the counter. If I had put it on Facebook, I'm sure I would have had more visibility, and I would have more signature. But it's only once, I think we are 900 people in Rosebery, and there you got about 300 signature. So I think the council, each time I approach the council, it's always a refusal. I ask them to have mulch, because the mulch which is actually here is thinning off, and I've got more weed to do. So it's no, we can't do it because we need permission, blah, blah, blah. I ask because I care about my town. When I first came here in Rosebery, I didn't want people to come to visit me. I was so ashamed to live in that town. Now it's clean, it's neat. If you read what I said, every 3 weeks I weed. Sometime in winter it's 5 or 6 weeks. There is no much work to do, but it has to be constant, regularly done. So the worker don't do anything at all because I do it, because I can't wait a year to have it done. So what I've done, what I would like to have is at least 12 now, 12 wine barrel with chosen plants, which are, they will grow in our climate, and they are resistant, and none of the rabbits or wallaby will eat it, and they need little care. The only care they need is twice a year they need to be put some manure or some fertilizer, and in summer, if you need, every time I check early in the morning, nobody sees me. You will never see me if you don't come during the week, doing the weeding or watering the pot plants that are in the main street, because I do it on weekend. So if you have read what I say, I am repeating what I said in my I think. The work that is to be done, it would be about, for the weeding, at the most 37 years per year. And in summer, 15 to 20 minutes watering the plant if it needs to be done. And I do that very early in the morning at 7 o'clock, and it's done, and there is no, if a nearly 80-year-old person can do it, anybody can do it. So I have approached in the past the mine. They wanted to help me, but they said the council was against it. So I come here again, and I'm asking you to help me.
Okay.
Now, I needed not to have the money myself. The main shed would have the money, and I would do what needs to be done.
Okay. So I've only received the petition today. So
Because I sent it beginning of the week.
Yep. So we only got delivered today. So I'll hand the petition over to the general manager, who will need to review that, and we'll take this on notice and bring it back to a workshop, councillors.
Yeah, because I think you are saying that you don't have any money, which maybe it's true, but if you want to have more people to come here, you need to beautify your town. Zeeland is absolutely ugly because it's flat, it's got no charm, nothing. If you don't do something to attract people here and change the way things are done, you have to beautify the town. Like Queenstown is not really nice. You need to have flowers. The only flowers that you can see, it's people that are a art gallery, and straight away it lights up the town. We have to in Rosebery, we have lost practically all the businesses. You've got one fish and chip shop, which is not top of the range. I like them, but it's not really good. We need to have people who are going to have businesses, who are going to generate revenue, and people who are going to be professional to come in Rosebery and in all the city around here. You need to beautify your town.
Thank you. No worries. We'll take that on notice, and we'll take it to a workshop. Thank you very much.
So this is all done for me,
Yes, thank you.
so I can go?
You can, if you
So
wish.
when will I hear from you?
We'll take it back to our next workshop, which will be in August. Yes.
In August, yes,
Yes.
all right. Okay, thank you for
No
listening.
No worries. Thank
And
you.
I hope it will be positive.
Okay.
If you think, I wanted to add up something before I go. If it's $6,000 is too much, we can split, only have 4 planters on each side of the road.
Yep.
By the way, all the businesses that are over there, I have approached all of them and they all want it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I need to be sure. Because that was.
Just wait for the general manager to come back. Item 208, council raised issue and informations. Is there any questions without notice? Must be presented. No questions without notice?
Mayor, just before you go on, referring back to Evelyn's presentation then, what happens with the petition situation there? What does the general manager do as far as review goes?
I review it against the Local Government Act, and if it meets the requirements under the Act, I'll write to Evelyn to say it meets the requirements and it'll be presented formally to council, and then it will actually go into an agenda. So it will come back to council as an agenda item. There are no requirements around what council does with it unless they've asked for a public meeting, in which case we organise the public meeting, but otherwise it's just for council's consideration. So when it comes in the agenda, councillors will have to make a direction to me about what to do in response to the petition.
Questions on notice. We've got two questions on notice. Councillor Butterfield.
Yep. So just wondering, to assist with council's communication to residents when considering installing council community notice boards in West Coast towns, strategic locations, accessible to all. Just the boards that need to be sealed and managed. I realise this comes with some cost to manage, but I feel that there's lots of information that we try to put out to our communities, but doesn't get there. So this might not be the answer, but I think we need to explore ways that we consult and communicate with our towns and our residents, so that important information gets out there and people are aware about what's going on in the community.
I'm happy to give a
General
answer
Manager?
for the record on that one. So certainly communication is something that councillors have raised as an issue in the past, and we have tried various ways of getting the message out there. Use of notice boards has been considered in the past by council, but my recommendation would be that any change to communication be considered in a holistic way with all the different avenues we use, and understanding the different costs that come with that, as well as trying to be have a better understanding of exactly what sort of information that needs to get out there and isn't getting out there. So at the moment we don't have any funding in the budget for notice boards, and it's not a matter in the annual plan. Therefore I'd recommend council consider it and consider the cost before they issue any direction.
Through you, Mayor. I know I think I'm speaking on behalf of the post offices that are the agents for the council. The council does send out everything to the post offices from the notice boards or their windows in Zeehan, Rosebery, Tulla and Strawn. It's in Queenstown here because you've got the main office. People are relying, they might go to the post office, but council's not displaying things anywhere. Do you actually display things?
Yeah, we tend to go to the supermarkets in Queenstown normally. But it's not the exact same display because we don't send the agenda, for example, to the supermarkets. Though we could.
But anything else is sent to the Straw post office, whether it's the employees, jobs and that, and we put them up down there for everyone to see.
Yeah, I just thought if you had a dedicated, it wouldn't be most everything else and be specific for council. Just a thought.
It was something, as the General Manager did state earlier, it was something that council did look at some time ago about digital or electronic notice boards, the costings. Staff made decision that the costing was a fair amount of money, and that, I guess that hasn't been looked at any further. Maybe it's something we could address in the future.
Yeah, I think for councillors, it really needs to be a engagement with the community to better understand what are the barriers to actually getting the information. So like Councillor Geraghty said, the information is going up in some locations. Is it that it's the wrong information? Is it that they want it in a different way? We probably need a lot more detail around what it is that people are finding hard about the communication, because I think by and large, when we do get questions in and things like that, most of the time the information has gone out there in some form, but people might not have read it or understood it, or so understanding those barriers, I think, would make us much more able to craft a communication or engagement strategy that address them. If we don't understand that, it's going to be very difficult. So councillors are probably in a very good position to understand that on behalf of the community.
Through you, Mayor, Councillor Geraghy's point there about displaying those at the post office, do you find from your experience that you read them yourself, or they're read from your knowledge by the locals?
We put on the outside, I don't know, anything that's advertised, as I said, there's job vacancies, the plans that we're looking at today, the Randy King and the gyms and whatnot. Yes, there's signs, and they've been put outside on the notice board to tell people that they can come inside and look at the material. And quite a few, if they're interested, they have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. So I guess the
That's
channels
in
are
the-
there.
Yeah, there's in the outer towns, I think what Councillor Butterfield is this here, unless people come specifically to the council office, that's going to have to be their main point to find out any information that's out there.
So I guess if people want to find out the information, this is the place
That
to
is
come
the
to.
place for Queenstown.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, maybe it's something councillors could talk
Yeah.
about at a workshop, and
Maybe
maybe
might
ask,
workshop that, Councillor Butterfield, and come up with
and maybe talk to the punters.
punters. Yep. Councillor Butterfield, second question on notice.
The other question I had was relating to the old central school. Just many Queensland residents have commented on the current state and look for the old central school. While I understand that there may be projects in the pipeline for the future, in the interim, as council any plans to tidy up the area, the buildings in the centre of town seen by many as a derelict of being in wood.
Yeah, Scott, did you want to say what
Through
we've
you,
got
Mayor,
planned?
we've got a bit of a program in place at the moment that allows and suits our budget. We'll be tidying up the yard a bit more, do a bit of pressure cleaning. And as time allows, all the windows will be boarded up. We seem to get 1 or 2 broken each week, so we'll just get the jump on everyone and board it all up, make it look a little bit more respectable. But in particular, we're going to take a bit of pride in the lawn, the garden itself, clean it up, get rid of the tree, and also pressure clean concrete fence all the way around the outside of the park and try to tidy it up as the budget suits.
Has been a challenge for us budgeting funding for buildings like that don't have a current use, when we have a lot of maintenance to do in buildings that do have current users. But we certainly recognise that point and we'll try and at least get the exterior tidied up. But ultimately, the best answer is to get someone into the building.
Thanks, General Manager. No questions without notice? Motions with any motions without notice? No motions without notice. There's no motions on notice. So response from the General Manager from previous meeting on the 28th of June. I guess that's all been sent out. Item 209 is Mayor and Councillors' diaries. It's for noting the Council resolved that the Mayor and Councillors' diaries and communications as presented be noted. Any questions on any of the items in the Councillors' diaries and communications? We'll take that as moved. Council's workshop, item 210, Council's workshop. Council resolved to note the following workshops were conducted by Council since the last ordinary meeting. Tuesday, 26th of July, a UTAS presentation on health and wellbeing research, TAS Networks update and rate remission policy review, and the West Coast toilet review. Happy to note that, councillors. Item 211 is Council's decision, status report and action item list. That Council resolved that the status report and action item of open council meeting decisions be received. Any questions on that, councillors? No question, we'll take that as noted. Item 212, committees of council. The reports and recommendation, council resolved the council committee reports as presented be noted. So we've got a report from the shared audit panel and the emergency management committee. Take that as noted. No questions on any of them two reports? No. Item 213, General Manager Report, that the General Manager Report as presented be noted. Someone like to move that way, please? Move Councillor Newman, seconded Councillor Evans. Any discussion on the General Manager's Report? I've got just on the vandalism in Headley Falls Park. The cameras not working? The police cameras that are in the park, are they not working, or do you know?
Pretty mad, yeah, it's Headley Falls Park.
Yes.
Yes, they're very intimate at the moment. They are working, but
Right.
don't seem to be capturing what we're trying to capture.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of work there to do to tidy it up a little bit and get in the right direction.
Lovely. Thanks, Scott. No other items from the General Manager Report. Put to a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 214 is correspondence. Council resolved that the correspondence inwards and outwards as presented be noted. Now there's a couple there for response. The only round with regarding disabled parking. Oh yes. So I guess it's asked. Mrs. Brown has asked about the disabled parking outside Evans's in the Bow Street of IGA Supermarket, Evans's IGA Supermarket, whether it could be moved to Orr Street. I guess, General Manager, you'd like to any comment on that?
We don't have any disabled parking there at the moment. We've got a courtesy parking spot that potentially we could move to Orr Street. But at the same time, council is looking at that project to refurbish Orr Street, which would involve putting in full-size curbs through there as well. So that problem would then continue. So we've got the issue seems to be that the street's not wide enough to put in disabled parking at modern standards, so any new parking's got to meet those modern standards. So we can put in courtesy parking, but that's not legally enforceable. Most of the issue seems to be around the curb, and there's two solutions to that. One of those solutions is that you don't have a curb, which you can see up Orr Street, which has not worked out very well for the businesses. Leads to people running into not knowing how far towards the footpath they are. However, it does make it much easier for people getting out of the car to access things. The other solution is that you use pram crossings or pram ramps. The difficulty in that is where you put them, and it's very difficult to find a location where everyone would be comfortable. So it wouldn't be too difficult for us to move the courtesy parking as it currently is to Orr Street, but I note that then this problem would re-arise in the next few years anyway if council decided to put in full curb down Orr Street. And if you didn't, would keep the problem of that we've currently got.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, just adding to what the General Manager just put forward, also that position where it's positioned now, the courtesy parking, if we were to tamper with that, that gutterage and that drainage through there, would end up with flooding. We've had instances of a rushing water down the Hall Street with drainage not catering. If we were to narrow or shallow that drainage there, we're going to end up with flooding right down that street. So there's that issue as well. But it is a concern because people see that as a place to park if they are incapacitated in any way. And we've had instances of elderly people falling up that gutter trying to manage. So it is something that should be firmly on council's agenda to just find a solution, even if it's temporary, to see where we are in a couple of years' time. So right now, I think just through prevention of injury, we reallocate, for whatever space is available in Hall Street, just to take away that angst that the elderly citizens have got.
So Councillor Evans, are you like to move a motion that we move the courtesy parking to Hall Street from Bow Street?
Well, hopefully I haven't got a pecuniary interest there, because one, I'm nearly an invalid, and two,
I think we could. How about I just take that on?
Take it
notice,
on
we can
notice.
look at if we could do it.
Yep.
Yes, if we could do
think
some
that's
more
probably-
information before we make the decision, but I would endorse the fact that
If
there is an
we
issue
can,
there.
if we can move it, we probably will. If that's it.
So if we ask the general manager and works manager, they can look at moving that courtesy parking around into Hall Street, away from Bow Street. Thank you. Also, we've got a letter from Anne Thompson about Letts Bay, which we've discussed, or have been down and discussed with a few of the residents at Letts Bay with regard to that. I've written to the general manager of Parks, isn't it? One of them, yeah, general manager of Parks, with regard to that, and his response was that he'll reply before the end of July. I think there's a letter in correspondence that went out to him with regard to some proposals there. There is a group of people down there that are willing to do some work around that with a rock breakwater, because one of the jetty has got a breakwater on it at the moment, so if they remove that, they're a little bit worried that the shores of that Letts Bay will be washed away, because it has done in the past. So they've come up with some solutions which we've sent to the Parks guy, general manager, to see whether they're interested in moving forward with the ideas from these group of people that are willing to take the jetties on themselves moving forward. So we'll see how that goes from there.
So for the response, do you just want us to draft something for you to send back to her along those lines?
Yep, thank you.
It's very good. Now, it's good that West Coast Council do get engaged, even though they're not directly council projects, but to play a role in those, heritage and cultural issues. It just shows that this council is active and supportive when these problems do arise. So, good stuff.
And further that, I have got a meeting, or hopefully have a meeting with the Minister of Heritage next week as well, with regard to that issue. So if we're happy to resolve the rest of the correspondence, Council. There's no other questions on any of the correspondence? No. Okay. Item 215 is election caretaker mode policy. The recommendation is that Council approve the Council Policy WCC 012 election caretaker period, or refer to a council workshop and determine the workshop date. Someone like for the discussion, someone like to move that way, please. Move Councillor Evans, seconded Councillor Shea. Open for discussion. Any discussion on the matter? I'd just like to say it's probably something which has been overlooked in the past and something we should have in place. I think it's good governance and it's something we should definitely have in place. Given that we have got an election coming up in October, it'll be something that's long overdue.
So, through you, man, just the source of this policy, is that like a generic local government association?
No, I think we stole it from another council.
We did.
Okay, Yeah. I just thought the
Speaking of
source
good
was
governance.
Good governance, yes.
But there is a push from LGAT and local government division that all councils should have a policy like this in advance of the election.
Okay, I'll put to a vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Item 2.16 on the report on the agenda is the Strawn gym development and the Zine gym development. The recommendation that council approve the design is presented and approve proceeding to a construction tender. We are open for discussion. Someone like to move that way, please?
I'm happy to move for discussion
Move
then.
Councillor Evans, seconded. Someone like seconded Councillor Butterfield. Open for discussion.
Ed, did you want to start off
I will.
with your
So,
email you sent in?
so I've had a fair bit of correspondence with regard to with the Zine people with regard to the removal of both squash courts at the Zine complex or project. A lot of the people were wondering why we're removing both and turning one into a multi-purpose room when we've got other buildings which are utilised at the moment with the neighbourhood centre, museum and the football club rooms, which are utilised for other multi-purpose uses. There is a fair interest in the squash for workers in the area, and given that Avery is about to embark on opening up as well, that there will probably be more mining people involved. A lot of the discussions I had was also around some of the people from the mainland that do venture down here, mining people that do utilise the squash court quite regularly, early of the morning or late at night when they get knock off work. So they're normally in there from 4:30 in the morning till they leave showering and go to work, which is normally at 6, and also after work, which they leave at 6. So the idea of moving to Rosebery to utilise that premises over there for squash probably doesn't lend itself. A couple of engineers have looked at the proposal and have said that we could probably save some money with the squash court to retain one, with a little bit of work that needs to with the floor, with some sanding and repainting the lines, and also there's some holes in the wall that will need to be patched, which will be the western squash court, so that also will allow for the middle part or the easterly squash court to be used for the entry into that facility still, and also the extension of the gym. So that's my proposal, and I'll probably proposing that we ask the general manager to go back and see if they can get it some redesign done around utilising that. Given the fact that also if it doesn't fit into the deed agreement, there is a location there that was earmarked for open area that could be utilised for this multi-purpose area if it was made an indoor-outdoor area with a sliding wall, which is in part of the old toilets of the swimming pool. So it's a bit of feedback from me, councillors. With regard to the Strawn recreation centre, it was never proposed that we were going to build a full court basketball court. The funding was never asked for that. It was always a gym, and that's what at the time the residents of Strawn wanted. They were back in 2016 when Councillor Garrity was part of the committee which looked at the Strawn Primary School when they were doing their redevelopment of gym. Even then, they were also looking at that time, a gym, but have it extended later on down the track. That never eventuated, which probably made a little bit more sense, given that the school would utilise it a little bit more than what private people would. Councillor.
Right, through you, Mayor, regarding this, I can speak on behalf of the Strawn one.
Yep.
First up, what was supplied for public comment was very scarce. It did not, it was pretty much just, what was on your thing, I can pick up. Yeah, no streets, no positioning of where it is. The current plans which are out for proposal is for the development of it this year. And it does show you that this area of the multi-purpose room encroaches on the football ground. My first question is, what's going to happen to the football oval?
So under the policy, it wasn't not the policy, the medium-term implementation guidance, the football oval's not retained for competition football, but in effect what will happen is we'll do a slight realignment once the gym's built. So there's enough grassed area that it doesn't, you just do a slight realignment and it's that you still have all that oval space.
Another concern is that where it is situated, you'll have to access the gym and where the toilet blocks are, which is up the far end near the senior sits. The car park is over 25 metres away. So you go, and the weather we've got here like we've just had, you're going to have to walk further, that's the minimum distance, to get inside this building to utilise it. Because you can, where it's situated, you cannot be parking out front. Another thing...
So I'm not sure why the 25-metre walk would be an issue. So the building and the toilets are designed for fitness activities. So
you want to use this as a gym, that little room. To access the gym is here.
Yeah.
The car park is up this end.
Yeah.
Now measuring that, that's 25 metres to the edge of the building. So here's the car park.
Yeah.
So the first person's going to have to walk at least 25 metres in the weather and the rain, let alone a few other people that are using it. Because the car parking is...
so there'll need to be pathways for people. But I'm not...
Now, what I am proposing is because the current development application is out until comment finishes on Monday the 1st, if people want it in that position, I am still looking, I prefer if this building was situated on the recreational land in Meredith Street. That could then be set, which is near the golf club, set back so you've got plenty of car parking in the front. Should the community, the council, businesses raise money, we could then have plenty of room to turn this community hall into a basketball, netball, indoor hockey usable room. And that would, if it was situated on that land, and as I say, the car parking would be out the front.
Yeah, so the DA will decide how much car parking is required, but we've put it there because we think we can meet the car parking requirements there. One of the other reasons is so it has close access to the oval, so it does also support junior football in that way.
You seem to be, with the football oval, you are, and the fact that you were giving us another small hall that and putting it there would never be able to get expanded into a full-size basketball court.
Well-
If in 5 years' time, think of the future, not now.
But-
You are restricting any growth or sporting growth that could happen to Strawn.
Any expansion of it to a basketball-sized stadium in the future would essentially be a complete rebuild, because the foundations and the structure won't be designed to support the height of ceiling, won't be designed to that size spec anyway. So you'd be going back down to the ground to do that. And I think you could do that in either location. It might require a bit
It
more.
will not happen where you're proposing to put it. You need that extra land,
And-
because you've got to make this thing double the size
Yeah,
to make be a usable court.
but council's current strategy is that we don't want more basketball stadiums. That's-
I mean, why? Strawn is getting nothing. What you're doing with this here and the situation of where it is, you are taking away. You're making the football oval smaller for competition. Give it 5 years' time or 10 years' time. We get more, population's growing all the time. Younger people are coming along. People are having babies that grow up to be little people playing football, and you're making it an unviable football oval.
Well, I'm not. I've put a recommendation to council. That recommendation is based on council's current strategies. It's based on the funding that council has available, and on the fairly clear guidance that council doesn't see more basketball stadiums on the West Coast. We have quite a few already.
We're allowed to have squash courts in every town,
No.
except Strawn.
That is one of the reasons why there's also a recommendation to remove the squash courts at Zeehan. So I think that's relatively consistent with council's current strategic guidance to me. Of course, if that's changed, then that should change. But it is very difficult for us when those strategies aren't clear on what council's direction is. If council's direction is we want a basketball stadium in every town, that's fine. But it means we need guidance so we can go out and get the funding. We can figure out where best placed to do it. But in the absence of that guidance, we've designed this to be a fitness centre. So it's not a community hall. Yes, it will support things like playgroup. It will support things where fitness, it's designed to support fitness activities. It's not designed for any other purpose. And it's certainly not designed to, in the future, expand into a basketball stadium. If council's direction is that it should be designed in a way that it could expand into a basketball stadium, then council could give us that direction. We'd have to go back and redesign and look at location. There will obviously be a cost and a delay associated with that. But it is up to council. We're presenting something that this is not going to come in under the grant budget. So council's already going to have to put in some money just due to inflation over time. But to do things in a way that, say, could expand into a basketball stadium, there will be significant added cost to that. You'd build the foundations in a way that could support it. You'd probably look at, well, let's just build it to that size to start with, even if you didn't go the full height. But council needs to tell us that and say that the money is going to be there to build it. So we've tried in this report to explain what the additional capital costs are. These aren't plucked out of the air. These are looking at square metre costs, talking to our designers and looking at similar builds elsewhere. So there is the option for council to retain a squash court or have a squash court, meet the deed requirements. We've put in an estimate of what that cost would be because we got that community feedback. There is an option to have a basketball stadium in Strawn, but whether it could go there, that's going to depend on a lot of different things. The height might not be allowable in that area. We might have to look at a different zone. So we would be looking at a whole bunch of different planning requirements if the idea was that it either should be a basketball stadium or in the future should be a basketball stadium. We certainly have not prepared this report on the basis that we think it either is a basketball stadium or even in the future should be a basketball stadium. Our advice...
But by positioning it where it is, it will never be able to be expanded into a basketball stadium. So this is why I would like to defer approving this and putting it out to tender until we get the feedback from the building application, which expires on Monday.
Well, If you want it to be a basketball stadium in the future, I think the best course of action for council would be to give me that direction, because we would go back and redesign and find a locate, because it might not even be able to be a basketball stadium on Meredith Street. It depends on geotechnology, like the investigate. It's a completely different building that we'd need to go away and investigate. So if the direction from council is you need to build it so it
It's
can.
recreational, it should be able to pass under a recreational zoning.
We haven't looked at that, so we haven't prepared designs for it to be a basketball stadium.
I really can't see it being any higher than no gas bursting shed in Lynch Street.
Like I said,
Have you seen it?
we have not looked at that. We have not done planning approvals for that. If the direction is it either should be a basketball stadium now or it should be one in the future, that is something we would need to go away, redesign, redo planning applications, and find a suitable location for. That's not something we've done at this stage.
Through you, Mayor, yeah, just listening to the discussion there, and it's good to get that feedback from Councillor Geraghty from a local perspective. Looking at this from where I sit, not having been involved in the earlier discussions and preparations of this, you can only take it on for what's presented here today. I acknowledge that there are budget restraints, and the activities here are specifically for providing an indoor gymnasium, with those other associated activities that are there. So I can only look at this today for what's presented, and I can't really perceive into the basketball stadium future, in fairness to Councillor Geraghty. So, I'm sort of, again, I can hear the Mayor with his argument in relation to the activities of squash and zing. So, there's no real clarity here for me to really make a decision. So I'll be looking for some sort of deferral about, approving this tonight. So that's just where I'm feeling.
If councillors wanted to defer it, I think it would be really important for you to give us some direction, because we're not going to be able to present more information unless you say to us what is it that you want us to investigate, and there will be a cost associated with that.
Through you, Mayor, I think deferring the Strawn one, the community need to be involved. This was just put out there, and someone's just waved it at them, and this is what you're going to get, whether you like it or not, because they don't like it, and your comments, you've covered your bases everywhere so that they're not getting anything different. And I think the community needs to be asked what they want in design of this thing, and placement.
I'm not saying it's me, but I don't really mind if Strawn has a basketball stadium or not. But a basketball stadium costs around $6 million, and council doesn't have the funds for that. So council would need to allocate that money to do it. And council has made a fairly clear direction to me that they don't want to be supporting that size infrastructure in all the different towns. So if that's changed,
So we could, if we talk to the community, explain it to the community, we could forget about covering in the tennis court. They don't play in the sunshine when there's sunshine. They're not going to play in the rain. There's money that can go towards back into this thing. You could then, as like you were saying, make the foundations, of this, suitable for a future expansion.
So I can't give you any advice on that. We would need to go back, redesign it. I think the redesign would be in the region of $20,000 to $30,000 for each project. We would also have to look at planning again and look at if that's the right location for that. So that would be the sort of direction council would need to give me. But you'd also need to be really clear about what the budget for that is. So is council wanting to proceed trying to spend as close to the grant deed as possible, or is this go to the community, design what they want, and then we'll find the money to do it? Because one of the reasons we didn't go to the community and say, tell us what you want and we'll design that, is because we know they want a basketball stadium, and we know this is not a project to deliver a basketball stadium because the funding's not there. So it's also not a good idea to go, tell us what you want, we're going to do it, knowing that we cannot deliver that.
But you did say we could redesign this multi-purpose area, the foundations, that if in 5 or 10 years' time,
I'm,
we could then just
What-
make it bigger.
well, what I'm saying is I could go back to the designers and give you a cost for what that would be.
Yeah.
I suspect it's going to be much more than what we're currently spending, because a lot of the money is in the foundations and in the planning and preparing it to be a basketball stadium. You'd end up with a much larger area of concrete. You'd end up with much more excavation. I don't know. So if the direction is we want you to go away, design a basketball stadium, and then tell us how much it is to build that basketball stadium, I can do that. There's going to be a cost associated with it.
I'm not
That
saying
counts. If you also say go away and design a building that could be upgraded to a basketball stadium,
Yes.
there is a cost associated with that.
Yes.
I'm happy to go away to do it if council understands that's not currently included in the budget. It's not included in the grant deed, and we will need to. That comes out of just operational funding. And in all likelihood, I suspect it's the cost. The advice we're giving is that you could go away and design a building that could be a basketball stadium in the future, or is a basketball stadium. That's going to be more than is currently in the grant deed. So if you're asking me to do that, I would like some direction about, are you only going to fund a basketball stadium or a building that could be a basketball stadium in the current grant deed envelope, or are you willing to allocate an extra $1 million to it? Same with the squash courts. I can go away and design a building that meets the grant deed, has the squash courts. We can consider the facts raised by the mayor, but there's only a point doing that if council's willing to say, yep, if it comes back in at 400,000, we're willing to consider funding that. Otherwise, it is wasted money. If you only want, we've designed this to bring in a minimum cost above the grant deed. So council would really need to make a decision that they were willing to at least, well, one, spend the money for the redesign, which probably for both is quite a substantial amount of money, and would be willing to entertain the additional cost for the buildings in both cases, because there's no point us going away saying we're going to design a building that could be a basketball stadium. I come back and say, yep, that's going to be $3.5 million. If council's not willing to look at spending that money out of its pocket, because you'd just be raising the community's expectations.
I still would like to defer the Strawn this year until we close the development
DA?
DA application and come to the community and tell them what you're telling me
So we've followed the,
before we go and approve this.
well, we've gone out to the community in accordance with the community engagement strategy. So I'd still need some guidance from council about exactly what, is it that you want to organise a community meeting down there? Is it that you want me to, like, if you say we're going to defer it to after the DA, I will be bringing back the same report, just with a note that the DA's been approved or hasn't been approved. So, like, we need guidance about what you actually want. Just deferring it just means that this report will come back in August, or will come back in
All
September.
right, I'll call a public meeting. Defer
You
it,
need,
call a public meeting.
need to put a motion up for that councillor.
And what would be, I guess, you need to have a look at what the purpose of the
What the
meeting
purpose
is.
of the meeting is.
So people can, I'm not sure that I'm not on Facebook. I was told when this thing was first advertised, that many people were on council's Facebook page commenting on it with bad comments.
We don't have comments on our Facebook page.
You might have done it at the time. Through you, you might have done it at the
No,
time.
no, we didn't.
They were somewhere. They were on there.
But, I mean, I've included every single response that we don't hide any responses, we've publicised it, and also consider what outcome would come out of the community meeting. So it's pretty clear they would say they want a basketball stadium. Is council prepared to put in, a basketball stadium costs $6 million. That's what basketball stadiums cost. Would council put in that extra money?
I don't want to approve this thing tonight. I'll defer it and I'll get back to you.
Councillor, when we applied for the grant, it was for a gymnasium. It wasn't for a basketball stadium.
I realise that, I know that.
So if people want, and that come from the community at the time. So if people want a basketball stadium, well, that's something which it's another
Separate
item,
project.
separate project. If they want a basketball stadium, well, then we need to look at that down the track. This is for a gym, which has also got a multi-purpose area as part of it, which is probably in addition to what was asked for in the original application for the grant. We wanted a gym in all communities, and Strawn didn't have one at the time. That's why this was asked for when we applied for the grant. It wasn't for a basketball stadium. Now, the stadium could come later if the Strawn community wish that that's something they want. Some of the comments I've heard is that if they put a basketball stadium in Strawn, that'll be the end of the competition on the West Coast for the junior basketball, because they won't get people coming to Queenstown.
Because, yeah, it's a long way from Strawn to Queenstown.
Well, those people come there now.
Queenstown to Strawn.
That's right.
Yeah, not very far from Strawn to Queenstown.
Through you, Mayor, just, I'm interested, you're looking at the squash court situation in Sam. What was your proposal tonight in relation to stalling this until such a time that the squash courts could be looked at, and then that might answer
So
Gary's question.
I'm going to move a motion that we ask the General Manager to go back to the designers to look at keeping the Western squash court.
Might be better just to say that have a squash court, because if
Have-
you limit
have
us
a-
to that, we could come back and say, spent 30,000, it's not feasible to keep the Western squash court. So if you just
Okay.
say,
Well, a
Right.
squash court, but I think with all the engineering advice I've got so far is the Western one's probably because then that allows you to what you're doing with the gym and everything else. But yeah, I'm willing to say, yep, just keep a squash court and utilise the what have they got there? The proposed area where the toilets used to be, which is I can't read.
I think
Picnic shed.
I think probably
That becomes
better not to be too specific, because if something comes up like we can't use that for a multi-purpose room because of access or like because
yeah,
of
but
doors.
we need to.
If you say you want a squash court, we could ask the designers
Okay.
to meet the requirements
Yeah.
and also have a squash court, and we'll ask them to do it in the lowest possible cost way.
As long, yeah, okay. But I think we need to make sure that we are pretty forceful with these architects as well, that you know, there is other options out there I don't think they've looked at this stage.
So in
So that's
relation,
where I'll be going.
in relation to Councillor Garrity's issue on the straw, Jim, first of all, it's indicated that the parking may not be good enough with the distance in inclement weather in relation to the parking in the facility in question, and also the encroachment onto a sporting field that's still used by junior sports, etc. So I guess there's some design questions there for one, and also Councillor Garrity does not seem to be convinced that the Straw community see this as the best fit for purpose building.
So just to be clear though, that the parking is not an issue from a design perspective. We will meet the requirements under
Okay.
DA for
Yep.
parking. It's a preference. It's not a planning issue. It's a what councillors want for the facility issue. And say again, like we've got to be very clear about what you're going to the community to say. Are you going to say that we will build, that we're even considering building a building that could be a basketball stadium in the future, because there will be an added cost to that. And yeah, so like if council's not willing to pay that cost, then it's very difficult to go to the community, because then you're going to the community saying, we're going to ask you what you want, even though we know this is what you're going to get. And if the Strong community said, no, we don't want this, we want a basketball stadium, the chances are relatively high that we would lose that D funding. And it's the same with delays. It's not as likely that we'd lose the funding, but it is a risk that we've highlighted here that potentially if the process draws out too long, we would lose the funding. So councillors need to be aware of that as well. But if we don't have clear guidance that council is willing to spend extra money on the Strawn project,
I still would like to defer this, so that the community are aware that this multi-purpose area is encroaching onto the footy field and it will not be a full-size playable football field ever again.
the football field will be the same size essentially as it is. We're just going to realign it a little bit. We haven't seen any problems with, you just twist it a little bit as well. You're just redoing the line marking.
It comes back to the goalposts.
Yep. You just
Move the
twist.
goalposts.
Because I was going to say, maybe they just put gym and stuff here and forget about the multi-purpose room and just get what we've got.
So the multi-purpose room was put in for a couple of reasons. The first one was under the Sport and Rec plan, the idea is that you can run classes. So we've tried when we're building new facilities to put in spaces where you can have classes or programming, as they call it. That was something that was identified as really important in that strategy. So without that multi-purpose space, you can't run yoga classes, you can't run things like that.
We've got a rec hall.
The rec hall is
the
rec hall is, if an engineer looked at it, it would be demolished. It is unsafe. So the other reason for the multi-purpose room is that council hasn't allocated any funds to redo the rec hall, and if they're not, that building will need to be demolished in the very near future. So this would give us an opportunity to allow groups that are fitness related, particularly in those early years, for say playgroup and things like that, to use that space. So that's why we've put in the multi-purpose hall. It was not to facilitate sport, but knowing council would need to spend a similar amount of money to redo the rec hall. So then I guess council would need to reallocate funding to that. But I am reluctant even now to let people use the rec hall. It is not safe.
Through you, Mayor. Listen to all the arguments. Why can't we defer this for a month, call a public meeting, see what the people of Strawn want? And if the majority of people want this, will we go ahead with it?
I think we know,
The people you get there will say they want a basketball stadium.
the people that come will want a basketball stadium.
I
And there's
don't want to put it, I don't think it should be going where it's going.
And there's nothing to say that a basketball stadium won't come in the future. That's, as you have stated, for future. It could be located somewhere else. But with regards to this, the grant was asked for a gym and an area for multi-purpose area for playgroup and things like that, which is what we went out to. Because given that the existing rec hall is unfit to be used, and if we lose that, Strawn will lose that at this stage.
Well, through you, Mayor, at this stage, I would still like to defer it until we get any submissions on development application for the Gaffney Street.
But then you could also approve it subject to the DA being approved. Because I mean, if a rep comes in that's against it, then that DA comes to council.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then council would just not approve the DA, then we can't build it.
We'll be doing it somewhere else.
Yeah. If council didn't approve it. But like I said, we haven't investigated. We did do fairly extensive geotech prior on the whole Strawn Oval site, and that's the location that the designers decided to put it. I can't give you exact advice on why that is, but we had a drill rig down there. We've looked very extensively at the site. It's not like we just come up with these things based on nothing. So they've identified that as the best site for a range of reasons, including geotech, flooding, planning approvals, all that sort of stuff. So I wouldn't be able to say you could put it in Meredith Street. If you want us to investigate that, we can go back and look at the designs that could go there, but that could add cost in building it up higher to do with floodplains or building foundations deeper.
The whole of Meredith Street's a floodplain, I'm telling you now.
So, the-
Under the insurance
yeah, so
properties.
there's different levels, and that determines how high you have to build up the building. It could be that, say, if you wanted to build it up on Meredith Street, you've got to build it higher. So that's why I'm saying you'd need to tell us what you want us to do so we can go to the designers and say, this is what we're doing. We're going to build this building in Meredith Street, and they will come back and say, okay, that's $3 million instead, or they might not, but we don't know. So that's why you need to give us direction. And if you're deferring it to a community meeting, I think councillors need to be really clear. What are you going to the community with, and what are you going to do when they come back and say basketball stadium? Because I don't want to stand there and say, just justify why we're doing a gym, or ask them the question that, let's talk about a basketball stadium if there's no chance that council's going to fund it. I'd leave that to councillors to do, because we've made our recommendations pretty clear on the money we've got.
And it is in line with the grant we did apply
Alright.
for.
That's the only change I can see needs to be done. We've got the kitchen all the way over this corner, got nothing to do with multi-purpose room.
Yeah. So the kitchen is specifically designed for our Auskick and junior sport. We have the store there because that's where you'd put the tables and chairs and things like that more needed. But like, if that's the change that councillors want, then no.
The kitchen, we hire this all out for functions all the time. Our rec
Yeah.
hall, which has got the thing, so the kitchen has to have the server into the hall and one out the back under
guess
the
plumbing
undercovered
also,
outdoor
maybe.
area.
Yep, but then the storage for tables and chairs, I'd need to move those further. So I guess it's what you want to.
Put them down there. There's strong young people who are going to be using them. But you cannot not have a kitchen into the hall.
So just remind, we've built this hall as a place for yoga class. Like it's that's what we've got this money for. It's not to host functions. Like,
But you're pulling down our only function hall. The rec hall, that's where we have our functions. The parties and the senior citizens get fed every year.
look, if that's the direction council wants to give me, that we put the kitchen there, then that's fine. You can give me that. You can give me that direction, and then we'll put the kitchen there. And if something goes wrong,
Okay,
it's
councillors.
on councillors' heads.
Okay, so
Through there, I mean, these are, for our strong community, this is a major development down there. I can understand where councillor Garrett is coming from. And I can understand that there is going to be some angst. The reality is, as the general manager has informed us, the funding was around building a multi-purpose gym and whatever. And I think we're all pretty clear on that. I think that's where we need to be. I don't think there's any angst about that. There is some angst about a basketball stadium, and I concur with you, it'd be nice to have. But we haven't got, the reality is, we have not got the money to be able to do it. Councillor Evans has suggested that, and he's in the same boat. I think the concept of getting some well-being, something into Strawn, we know the hall down there is in disrepair. So why not put the money into there, suggest the changes that you've suggested, use that as a pathway forward. If we need to progress the basketball stadium further down the track, so be it. I can understand how we need the kitchen somewhere, the alignment of the ground to suit, and it really is only going to be mini league. I think we've got to be realistic about that in the next 10, 15 years. An area that satisfies our football, hockey, if it may be, outdoors, and whatever. I think we've covered all the bases. So I'm very comfortable with the strong part of it, recognising that a basketball stadium would be great to have. On the pretext of what's going on in Zeehan, I believe in what the Mayor, whatever motion we do put together, that will give the council some direction, or the GM some direction on where we need to go. And
and workshop it or do whatever we need to do, noting that we really struggle to get people around the council table when these sort of things come up, because I can guarantee you that there's 4 or 5 of us and that are here at workshop regularly for these sorts of things, and they're not to be taken lightly. I believe that to put your hand up for council, you should be around the council table when we talk about these things, and that's what I've got to say about it.
Thanks, councillor. So, moving forward then, I'm willing to put a motion up that we ask the general manager to ask the designers to look at the Zeehan project, retaining one of the squash courts, and also ask the designers to look at whether the kitchen can be moved to where store 1 is. Yes, and on the Strawn project. Given the fact that there will, and noting that there will be extra costs with regard to the design changes that may need to be made.
Well, I think you can save the money with the roof over the tennis.
Well, that's,
We'll worry about do that last.
so I'll put a motion forward. Did you get that motion? Sorry. Yep.
Can you give us some clarity on that motion, please, Mr Mayor?
That we ask the general manager to go back to the designers with the Zeehan project to include one of the squash courts as part of the project. And with the Strawn project is to look at whether the kitchen can be relocated to the position of store 1 on the plan.
Councillor Garrity?
Yes.
And bring them back to a workshop.
Well, once we get the design,
No,
it'll
well,
come,
come here then.
probably not to a workshop, but it'll be
I'll second that, Mayor.
emailed out to councillors, because
So do you want to approve the designs again if we make those changes, or are you approving the expected increased cost, or is this a redesign, come back for a full report with the new costing?
I guess we will need the recostings before we make a decision. Well, there will be a cost on the extra design that's required before we make a decision on so it will be, well, before the next council meeting, because we'll have to make a decision then.
We're not sure how, I can't tell you how quickly the designers will be
Okay,
able to.
right. No.
We'll go back and we'll ask them, and then when we get designs
Yep,
back.
yep.
Just to clarify, do you want that to go back out to community engagement, or so it'll come straight back to council once we get the design?
Come straight back to council.
Okay, very good, thank you.
So did I have a seconder for that?
You did.
Thank you, councillor Evans. We'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Councillor Evans, you've declared an interest in the next item.
Thank you, Mayor.
Item 217 is decision report on the brand implementation strategy. The recommendation is that council adopt the revised West Coast Brand Implementation Strategy 2022. Someone like to move that way, please, for discussion? Move Councillor Shea, second Councillor Garrity. Open for discussion. Excuse me. Any discussion on the matter?
There's obviously a lot of work on it, but they've done a good job.
Have we got ideas of costs that, no?
Not yet. Some of it we're going to be doing operationally. Some of it we'll seek grant funding for. Most of it will just be in staff time, so it's a little bit tricky for us to tell you what the cost will be.
We did, I can't remember what year it was. We did allocate some funding in the branding to do some work on the website some years ago.
Yes, so website is business as usual for
Right.
us now, so the website is continually updated. That's probably in the region of $10,000 to $20,000 a year is website maintenance. The rest will come out of various budgets. Some of these items are sort of in the annual plan for this year, so things like the signage audit and stuff like that. So we'll start including them in annual plans, and that's when we'll provide costs for you. There'll be a fairly limited cost with the things that are sort of ongoing, so like the brand, getting brand partners on board, etc. Will be fairly minimal.
Through you, Mayor.
Councillor.
I remember, 12, 18 months ago, it was put to council that we change all our logos to the brand thing, and we said, no, you can do it online, yes.
The letterhead, that letterhead.
Where did the letter bottom get changed? Why? It's not a head, it's a bottom.
Yeah, just so that one of the things we had some concerns around communications coming out of council. It's about making sure that council communications all look aligned and similar. So you can certainly see that in our electronic presence now. That all our communications tries to have a very consistent look about it, and that's to help people know it's a message coming from council. We still use the council logo, so we haven't changed the council logo or anything
No,
like
but
that.
you did come to us asking for us approval to change all our stationery and everything, and we said no.
No, we came to you and asked for permission to change the logo.
The logo.
Which we haven't.
Because that was on uniforms and everything.
Yeah,
But
we
that's
still use the
still the
logo.
same, still the logo, yeah.
Through you now, it might be an opportunity for council area to have a look at some Facebook tiles. I don't think are you on Facebook at all? So that might be an opportunity for you to have a look at what that means and how we are getting our messaging out by using the brand. So our logo has remained the same. We've definitely used the branding colours, incorporating that in the lower part of the letterhead. There's no additional expense has been on any part of the stationery. We actually print our own letters onto that, so we print that as a part of it as well. So it's been very minimal, but we try to make an impact to professionalism. So when you do look at our council Facebook, you can see the titles, and we've used certain branding colours for certain different messaging. But if you haven't had an opportunity to see that, I don't think you'll probably get the understanding of the feel that we're going for. So happy to show you at some point, or if you want to jump on.
I've noticed areas there, there's reds and the yellows and the...
Yeah, so correct. But there's definitely been no change to the logo.
Right.
And it tries to give a consistent look, both digital, print, so it's similar. But no, we haven't tried to. No, we incorporate the logo wherever we can.
Yeah.
For tourism-facing things, we tend to use West Coast Tas in text as per the brand, but that's because that's what we use for marketing. But it's not about marketing council, it's about marketing the West Coast. So we use the West Coast brand.
Okay, no other discussion on the matter? Put to a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, I'm
Councillor Evans.
not going to leave.
Actually, you won't be able, since we don't have a deputy mayor, so you'll have to just declare an interest in.
Up your ear.
You can come back.
Put my ears in, fingers in my ears.
Need to take a vote around the table to. No, it doesn't. It's not.
Okay, I'm declaring an interest in this next topic. Well, I can't leave the meeting because we haven't got our deputy mayor's not in attendance. I'll have to ask the general manager if he'd read out.
We can elect someone.
Yeah, so you could move a separate motion to elect a temporary deputy mayor if you want to, but I mean, it's not.
No, well, it's not a pecuniary interest, it's only an interest, so on the committee.
Oh, you can read it
I
out.
can read it out. So the recommendation that the council approve the $600 event funding for the Lake Burberry fishing competition. Someone like to move that way? Move Councillor Newman, second Councillor Garrity. Open for discussion. Any discussion on the matter? Put to vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? carried. Thank you, councillors. Okay, I think that is the end of open meeting. Item.
You need to.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so item 218 is matter proposed for the closed meeting. The recommendation that items 219 to 228 discussed by council in closed session. Someone like to move that way, please? Move councillor Evans, seconded councillor Butterfield. Put to a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Okay. Item 219 is closed meeting, time being 6:20 p.m. The recommendation is the council resolve by absolute majority to go into closed session to consider the following matters.